Hello and welcome to the latest video backer updates for the Astro slide, and we're excited today to be able to show you a first look at the first T0 sample of Astro slide. I'm joined today, as always, by Dr. Janko Mrsic-Flogel, the founder and CEO of Planet Computers. Hello, Janko.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Very, very well. And yourself?
Very good, thank you.
Good. Recovering from, I think, your first shot of freedom juice yesterday.
Yes, we are getting there. First jab.
Excellent.
First jab is in. Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, so you're in Planet's office HQ in London, and you've got the Astro T0 sample, which has finally arrived at Planet HQ. First of all, can you tell us a little bit, as a bit of background for those that don't know, what is a T0 sample?
Yes, so we received the T0 sample. So here it is. This is the phone that we received last week. The T0 sample is essentially the first sample that is created from the molds and all the components exactly as it would be for production. So that means that all the molds are complete. The parts are made, not modeled, but they're actually made in the mold themselves. They come out, they're painted correctly, and essentially we're trying to validate the entire system before we go into full production. So that's essentially what the T0 sample is. So essentially I can show you a couple of things on here. So one is
super, thanks.
Opening and closing, which is obviously very interesting for backers to see. Closing, it's quite easy. So it's quite easy to do that, and there's quite a few other things. But essentially, to answer your question, T0 is production components,
right?
And the test of those components.
So it's kind of like production sample number one, almost first one off the block.
That's correct. What we're trying to do now is to really validate everything, so that we check that everything is okay. We've had a number of questions, but the key thing is checking that the hinge is working fine, that that we're happy with the way that the device opens and closes, that we're happy with the keyboard, that we're happy with things like wireless charging, that we're happy with the radio, things like the signal, 4G, 3G, 5G, etc. So just validating every single component, of course, cameras, etc.
So the purpose of the T0 is for you to be able to check that everything is working in a way that you expect it to. And with having had the sample now for a few days, how's it looking?
In general, I'm very happy. We've been checking many things, including making calls, including looking at the hinge, any other refinements. There are a few things which are not working properly, so those are being rectified and fixed. So I can go into a short list. Essentially, I think the screen is really wonderful. We've now got things like brightness control, so this is now operational, which was not operational on the CS sample. We've got we've basically the fingerprint sensor is operational. The cameras are operational, but still need to be tuned and oriented correctly. Obviously, the microphone and the speakers, we're testing the speakers. They're finally in phase, so that we have stereo sound that is actually in proper phase. We've checked that. So there's a number of things that are there. If you're asking me about what we're still looking to refine, some small tightenings on the hinge, which will mean that some things are just operating a little bit tighter. And the keyboard, which we had a problem with one of the molds, so that is already actually, the mold is already rectified, and we're getting some new samples for the next sample. So.
Okay, so would you say that typically, based on past experience, this T0 is about on track for what you would expect from a T0 sample?
So I think it's it's pretty good. I mean, comparing, for example, with the Cosmo, we had if you opened and closed the Cosmo in the T0, the machine actually reset and shut down.
Okay.
So, comparing to the Cosmo, I think it's actually so we can actually test and check our software. We've already checked the backup application that it works on Android 11 and that it works correctly. We've already found some other issues with Android 11, so looking at the revamped versions of AirMail and so on. So as well as checking the hardware, we're also doing some quick checks on the software, which of course we can continue doing while the device is in production. The key thing that needs a little bit more improvement is the keyboard operation and the hole sensor for opening and closing. So there's a couple of things that we still need to look at.
Okay. And can you just for the backers again, I'm sure that they would want me to ask you to do this. Can you just show the mechanism again, like you did a moment or two ago?
Yeah, so this is I'll show the phone a little bit in detail, so you can see the
I like the back there, looks really nice.
Yeah, we've changed the back, so there's some nice sort of grippy lines, which actually work really well. There's the camera,
yeah,
and the logo. So the final treatment of the outside is still something that we're working on. So we're looking at a few examples, but in general, we're very, very happy with the device. I can show you the opening and the closing again. So open, close.
Locks into place at the top there. Yeah.
Pretty simple, and then close.
Nice.
Very simple. Actually, it's quite steady. It's a big improvement on the CS sample in January.
Okay.
Because these are now machined parts, properly machined, coming from the tooling. So we're quite happy with that. And really also things like wireless charging that we've already tested. A couple of things still to debug on the firmware. So we need to double check that NFC is going to work. So before going into production, we also need to double check that the NFC circuitry is working, because that's something that's still yet to be tested. On the radio, we're also improving the antenna a little bit so that the 5G reception is better than the test antennas that we've had up to now. So we're actually making a custom antenna, our own antennas, and that's also being tested in the next sample, which is the T1.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah, I guess that this one having been called the T0, the next one you would imagine would be the T1. When would you expect to see that?
So before we go into production, we need to have everything 100% working, right?
For
so
sure.
We hope that will be the T1, and we hope that we will get the T1 around the 16th of June. So that's the current date for the T1.
Okay. And so obviously it's dependent on what the T1 is like, but if assuming and everything's ironed out on the T1, when would you then expect production to start in that case? After that date, obviously.
So yes, so obviously we're running a little late, but if we're good with the T1, then essentially, I think very quickly after that we can start the PR1 and PR2 samples, which essentially are test runs of production. And out of those, even possibly some backers would receive maybe a PR2.
Okay.
Because it's essentially the same coming out of
that's a production model, effectively.
Initial material, yeah, coming out of the initial material.
Right.
So hopefully, I don't know exactly the date because we can start, but I would say towards getting into July now.
Right. So,
but we have to see.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of probably the next step for the backers that the backers will be wondering about is when you'll be asking them for their keyboard layout preferences, particularly for the smaller runs. Perhaps the keyboard layouts that are less typical, not just the UK, US type ones. So do you have some indication of when that will be taking place?
So for the major markets, this is because of the Indiegogo options. Indiegogo only gives us a certain number of options. So we've only sort of listed the top few keyboard layouts on the Indiegogo options. But for the other keyboard layouts, for example, Italian, Russian, etc., there's a few other ones. We basically, that of course we support 24 keyboard layouts. We'll be asking, I would say, in about a couple of weeks. So probably in line with receiving the T1 unit. Assuming that the T1 is okay, then we need to know the keyboard numbers to place the production order.
For sure. Okay. And in terms of obviously the last announcement that we made, that you made, was around the accessories and a whole different bunch of accessories, which I know was very well received by the backers and in general. Are you planning to have prototypes for those, and have you got any idea of the dates for those?
So as soon as we're now we to get some of the peripherals, some of the accessories, we need to have the samples available.
Of course,
to peripheral manufacturers. That's various things to check the operation, for example, especially for the covers and the sleeves. We need to have the exact devices available to the peripheral manufacturers, to the accessory manufacturers. As well as that, of course, just checking how the stylus exactly works with the screen for the stylus, and just checking that the wireless charging is working. So as soon as we have some samples available for the peripheral manufacturers, then when we're happy, we will show that. So I'm expecting that to be probably, I would say early July at the moment.
Early July. Okie dokie. And how's it going on the software side?
It's going very well. We've been working on a revamp of Airmail, which has a few new modes, because of course now we need to support the portrait mode. We've been testing the backup, planet backup, on the Astro itself. So we've actually done a test yesterday where we are restoring data from a Cosmo onto the Astro from an internet server, and that's worked successfully. We're also revamping notes, so notes will have a new look, and also everything needs to work really well in portrait mode now.
Of course.
We have a transformer phone. So yes, we're very happy with software progress. On the firmware, we're working with our ODM in China on the firmware jointly. So we're working on various parts ourselves and some parts together with China. So that's also going reasonably well at the moment, with just ticking things off the list, making sure that all subjects and all points are covered.
Okay, so I think they were the main questions that I wanted to ask you today. Anything you'd like to add as an additional
maybe
point?
to show the device a little bit.
That would be good. Yeah,
see,
I'm sure people would like to see it.
Yeah. So there's some. This is the device. You can see.
Lovely.
We're just showing Airmail on here. Let me just show a few things. But as you know, with the normal desktop, you've got pretty much normal desktop. Of course, this will all be skinned in the future, but you can see the operation. We're still running in debug mode, but you can see that things are already running very well. We're playing videos. We've got the camera working. So the camera is still not 100%, but it is. They're all operational, and working in terms of. So most things are now operational. The indicator light, the notification LED, but still, I think one more iteration to get to what we would sort of regard as a a gold master where we can say, okay, right, this is going for certification while we start production, etc. So
okay, great stuff. Well, thank you very much for giving us that update today, Janko. We very much appreciate it and look forward to seeing the next version of the T1 in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.